Hi everyone, this is Nitin. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to this special webinar training on how to win patients during all three stages of the patient life cycle. Now, I've actually been working on delivering this training for a long time, simply because this is, to a large extent, the culmination of all my efforts as a private practice owner. It's a culmination of all the work we put in as private practice consultants with all the clients that we work with. So I really hope that you get a lot of value out of this training, and I'm fairly confident that we can make this a very powerful and a very productive training for you. So thank you everybody once again. Thank you so much for attending this special training on how to win patients during all three stages of the patient life cycle. Again, thank you so much for attending this training on how to win patients during all three stages of the patient life cycle. Now, I'm going to make all the downloads and the PowerPoints available to you now on the right side of the screen. So currently on the right side of the screen, you will see an option to click a download now button. When you click on that download now button, you're going to be able to download the PDF handouts of the training material on how to win patients during all three stages of the patient life cycle. So go ahead and click on that button. Again, go ahead and click on the download now button on the right side of your screen, and you'll be able to download all the training material associated with this training. So why don't you go ahead and do that right now? And we will then go ahead and get started with the training. Now, as before I get started, I usually like to do a customary sound check. So everybody listening, if you can just type in, even if I get a couple of responses where you type in on the right side of your screen, you'll see a chat window. If you can just type in audio confirmed, that way I can make sure that you're able to hear me okay. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay before I jump right into the training on how to win patients during all three stages of the patient life cycle. So let's get started. Small changes to your patient experience, as opposed to big, massive, sweeping, groundbreaking transformations, can yield a significant benefit to your practice over time. In fact, the right patient experience begins even before the patient has stepped into your clinic and continues well beyond discharge. Now, I like to think of this as being split up into three different stages of the patient life cycle. So the three different stages of the patient life cycle, and we'll be getting into them in a lot more detail. I'll be going into them in more and more detail, but there are three different stages. Again, there are three different stages of the patient's life cycle. And for you to succeed in your practice, you really need to master all three stages of the patient life cycle. So let's get into this one more time. The three stages of the patient life cycle include consideration, discovery, and transformation. Now, I'm going to obviously go into a lot more detail when it comes to all three stages. So like I said, there's consideration, discovery, and transformation. But here's the interesting part. In a lot of our practices, in most practices that I talk to as a private practice consultant, these stages are typically extremely disjointed. Here's what that means. What that means is, some patients that you're working with, they're already in the discovery stage. In other words, they're already engaged with you, they're already interacting with you, and they're kind of sort of getting results from a clinical standpoint, but they're not becoming, they're not going through what I call transformation. And I'm going to explain what transformation means by the end of this training. But on the other hand, you have some patients, you don't exactly know what happened, you're not exactly sure what you did, what that threshold was, or what that that tipping point was. But gosh, these patients are, they're your biggest fans, they're your biggest advocates. They are what I call human billboards. And these are the patients that, will essentially tell anybody that they can think of. In fact, they'll even tell people they don't know. They'll tell people about how wonderful you are. That's the stage of transformation. Getting patients to go from consideration, where they, they're prospects, I would go so far as to call them suspects. Getting them from a stage of consideration to a stage of discovery where they are patients, where they're working with you, and finally into a stage where they have undergone a transformation. Again, this is not just a clinical transformation. I'm talking about a psychological transformation, a conditioning process that makes them become your biggest fans, become your biggest advocates. That really, is what I'm talking about here. So again, there are 3 stages of the patient life cycle. There's a stage of consideration, there's a stage of discovery, and the final stage is transformation. So there are 3 stages: consideration, discovery, and transformation. And typically, for most private practices, these 3 stages are completely disjointed. Now, as you can imagine, I'm trying to make a point here. I'm trying to make a point that the 3 stages, okay, of consideration, discovery, and transformation are progressive in nature. In other words, an individual goes from a stage of consideration to a stage of discovery, and finally to a stage of what I call transformation. So there is basically a multi-step evolution, the 3 stages of evolution, 3 stages of the patient life cycle, but the patient essentially evolves. Their relationship with you changes, their perception of you changes. Initially they probably came to you grudgingly because, they had a prescription, they had pain, the insurance company recommended you. They probably didn't even want to come for treatment. But over a period of time, as they got better, as they got to know you, like you, trust you, heck, maybe some of them become your friends. Patients bring us cookies, patients do all sorts of things for us. Then the patient basically becomes more of a human billboard. So there's a process of evolution. I call it multi-step evolution in your relationship with the patient. So how does this all begin? All of it begins with the stage of consideration. So the consideration essentially, consists of everything that the patient goes through even before they set foot in your practice for the first time. So a lot of the perception that the patient has of your practice happens even before the patient sets foot in your practice for the first time. Now think about it this way, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail in a couple of minutes, but think about it this way. What is the patient's experience when they have that initial phone call with you? What is the patient's experience when they're trying to schedule an appointment with you? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Is it painful? Is it frustrating? Is it disjointed? Does the patient get help when you're trying to help them figure out their eligibility, their insurance benefits verification? Once the patient now steps into your clinic, what is the initial experience of the patient in the waiting room? What is the experience of the patient when they have to complete their own intake? Are they just, sitting there, filling out information on a pen and paper, using a pen and paper? Are they doing it on an iPad? Is the clinician doing it for them? What is the kind of conversation they have with the front desk staff? What is the kind of conversation they have with, other support staff in your practice even before they interact with the clinician? Essentially, it's a summary of all the experiences that the patient has even before they see the clinician for the first time. So all of these factors are in play in the background during the consideration stage of the patient life cycle. Let's dig into the consideration stage a bit deeper, because it's a very, very crucial part of the patient life cycle, because what it does is it establishes the patient's first experience, first impression of your clinic. There's a comfort level or a lack thereof that's essentially established within seconds of the initial interaction with you. The patient makes a decision as to whether your staff, okay, and by extension you, whether your staff is supportive, helpful, and empathetic to the patient's condition. So, I'll give you a simple example. If the patient says, I have low back pain, if your staff says, okay, what's your insurance? See, that's a bad thing. So one of the ways to establish whether your practice is doing well in the consideration phase is to examine your ability to reach potential prospects, and more importantly, the initial the initial impression they have, and how these initial prospects are attracted. Not only how are they attracted, but how are they converted to potential patients. Now, a quick way to do that is to have mock calls, essentially calls where you pretend to be a patient and you call your front desk. It's essentially a random audit of your front desk staff to identify areas of improvement. So, think of it this way. If you're trying to, if you're a patient in your own practice, how easy or difficult is it for you to schedule appointments? Is it simple, effortless? Is it nice and fairly straightforward? Or is it, extremely difficult? Is it a big challenge to be able to schedule appointments? That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. Can patients schedule their appointments online at their own convenience? With the growing number of devices patients can use to access the internet, more and more patients are looking for simple, convenient ways to schedule appointments without even having to talk to anybody over the phone. So, think of it this way: every single patient that speaks with every single staff member, every single interaction is molding the patient's perception of your practice. Now, the eligibility or the insurance verification process, that's confusing, that's intimidating for a lot of people. Make it easy for the patient by doing the hard work and telling them what their copay is and if they're likely to see a bill from you. A very simple explanation can put the patient's mind at ease and significantly improve acceptance of the treatment, as well as encourage timely patient payments. So basically, an educated patient is a happy patient. So many things to consider. Think of the ambience of the waiting room, for example. It creates a lasting impression. Is the waiting room neat and tidy? Is music playing in the background? Is it a comforting place? What about smells and fragrances in the air? Are the staff members relaxed, attentive, and helpful? Are they checking their phones? Or are they messaging friends on Facebook or chatting amongst themselves? Are they paying attention to the needs of the patient? All of these are things that allow the patient to make an immediate judgment, if you will. And I know the word judgment is a strong word, but whether we like it or not, that is indeed what is happening. All of these things allow the patient to make an immediate judgment, an immediate decision about your practice. Now, the patient intake process in general takes up a lot of time for patients and front desk staff. The objective for the front desk should be to gather specific details from the patient and verify the accuracy of all that information as quickly as possible. It's crucial that all details match with the patient record that exists in the database of the insurance company. Small inadvertent mistakes can cause claim denials, and these mistakes can include but are not limited to errors in the date of birth, misspelled name, address, and so on and so forth. So all of these essentially are factors that influence efficiency, productivity, and perception of the patient at the front end, essentially at the entry point into your patient experience, into the patient's life cycle with your clinic. We can obviously examine this in a much more deeper fashion, and I'm going to. How are your patients, how are your prospects finding you? For example, if a majority of your patients are Medicare patients, where are these patients, getting together in your community? Are there senior citizens' homes where you can conduct workshops? Are there certain events, or are there certain, certain groups where these patients aggregate? How can you reach out to these patients? Are there certain, local newspapers that these patients read? Are there certain websites that these patients visit? You've got to be able to reach these potential prospects, and you've got to be able to get them to consider you. And you've got to be able to present them with some sort of an offer, whether it's coming into your practice for a free consultation, whether it's a free seminar that you do, whether you're giving away what I call prospect stimulators. You've probably heard me talk about that before. The key is to get these patients to consider you, get these prospects to consider you, but more importantly, you've got to attract these individuals and convert them into patients. Again, you've got to attract these individuals and convert them into patients. And remember I talked about the fact that a lot of these links, the links between consideration, discovery, and transformation are a little disjointed. Well, this is exactly where the disconnect happens. A lot of private practice owners have excellent clinical care skills. So once the patient goes into the stage of discovery, it's a slam dunk. But the bridge between the consideration and the discovery, the link between the conversion, the link between the attraction of a prospect and the conversion of the prospect to the patient is almost non-existent. And I don't say that in a bad way. I simply say that because it's a matter of fact, and it's, that's one of the reasons you're attending this training. Your goal is to bridge that gap. So not only do you need to be able to reach potential prospects and attract them, you need to be able to convert them to patients. Now, a significant aspect of consideration is the ability to trigger referrals from existing patients. A lot of times, we tend to do things that are difficult, challenging, but we overlook the things that are right in front of us simply because, when it's right in front of you, it's actually hiding in plain sight. As intelligent, educated private practice owners, we tend to sometimes overcomplicate things. And I'm saying this because we simply, all of us, can simply get more referrals by asking patients for referrals. It's really as simple as that. One of the biggest secrets in marketing, and I can say this because I'm a marketing consultant. We've worked with many practices over the years, is to simply ask for the referral. Ask and you shall receive. So the ability to trigger referrals from patients is directly dependent on how many times you ask patients for referrals. And there are some other things you can do to increase referrals, which we'll get into as well. So obviously, keeping patient satisfaction at a high enough level so that the patients want to give you referrals is a significant component of consideration. No patient is going to go from consideration to this. No prospect is going to go from consideration to discovery and eventually, to becoming a human billboard and eventually to a stage of transformation if they are not satisfied, if they have a bad patient experience. So keeping patients happy, keeping them satisfied by constantly listening to them, constantly having patients fill out surveys so that they can give you feedback. It's extremely important. So what you want to do is you want to increase patient satisfaction and you want to maximize patient engagement by doing workshops, by giving away prospect stimulators, by conducting contests, by featuring patients in your newsletters, by doing things that essentially move them up the ladder from consideration to discovery and eventually from discovery to transformation. A lot of these things, maximizing patient engagement, a lot of these things are crucial aspects of the discovery phase. So you will see me dig a little bit deeper into these specific strategies and tactics when we explore the discovery phase. Now, one of the things that makes it easy for a patient, makes it a no-brainer for a patient to consider your practice and to engage your practice is if you're well known. Brand recognition, having a brand that is recognized, essentially being almost like a celebrity. So when you walk into a local, if you were to walk into, let's say, a local diner, do people recognize you? And I'm not trying to talk about celebrity from an egotistical sense. I'm talking about it strictly from a branding sense, from an engagement sense, from a marketing, from a financial sense. If you're well known as a private practice owner, if your practice is quote unquote famous, either through a combination of advertising or viral marketing or cross promotions, joint endorsements with other businesses, articles that you write in the newspaper, whether you use a product like the therapy newsletter, whether you use, a patient portal in softwares like InTouch EMR, doesn't matter what you do, but if your practice is well known, then it's very easy for you to bridge the gap between consideration and discovery. You see, patients in the 21st century, in the new economy, are looking to work with practices that they can get to know, like, and trust, because the differentiating factors between practices, other than the celebrity factor, are slowly becoming non-existent. What do I mean by that? What I mean is a patient knows that they can pretty much get the same quality of care from practice A versus practice B versus practice C. So when a patient's going to make a decision, they make decisions based on factors that are actually, to some extent, illogical. Here's what I mean by that. Typically, you would expect a patient to make a decision based on, their insurance, proximity, and what their doctor recommended. But time and again, I've seen cases where the patient actually is open to a higher copay, driving a longer distance, and going to another practice if they feel that they're working with somebody famous. I mean, there's a reason why, reality TV stars like the Kardashians and, a lot of the stuff we see on TV. I mean, there's really, in those cases anyway, there's a lack of substance. However, there is no lack of ratings. There's always, people in the news. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting that you be newsworthy without substance. That's not the point. But the point is, when you combine the outstanding clinical care that you provide, the outstanding patient experience that you're committed to, and all the painstaking effort that you put in to the discovery phase, to the treatment phase, when you combine all of that with an element of celebrity, you have an exponential effect. You're kind of like you're lighting a match to a fire. You're lighting a match and sort of triggering a wave. You're igniting referrals, if you will. So I hope that makes sense. So all of these factors that are combined, that are collectively summarized as the word consideration, can again be exponentially increased if you have multiple triggering factors. A trigger factor is essentially an avenue by which a patient interacts with you, considers you, and eventually works with you. Physical therapy is just one trigger factor. Fitness and weight loss training is another trigger factor. Again, these are just examples. I'm not saying that you got to start offering weight loss classes. I'm giving you examples. You'll need to find the trigger factor that works best for you to maximize your avenues of consideration. Acupressure is another trigger factor. Massage is a trigger factor. Dry needling, another trigger factor. Pre-postnatal classes, balance and postural prevention classes, one-on-one personal training, group fitness training, Zumba classes. Heck, having, healthy nutritional supplements, selling orthotics, all of these are different trigger factors. So I hope you're starting to get a sense of how truly abundant the options are and how you can maximize the avenues for consideration. So there's a big difference, between being considered by your patient for one thing versus being considered by your patient for multiple things. I mean, a case in point is my own business. We started out providing newsletter services. We have a product that's used, by practice owners all across the country called the Therapy Newsletter. Then we started providing, coaching and consulting services to help practices grow by virtue of products like Referral Ignition. We also have products, that allow SMS marketing. There's a product called Clinical Contact. And, we also now have EMR services, in Touch EMR, which is an ONCN Office of the National Coordinator certified, EMR product. We have InTouch Biller Pro, which is a complete billing software suite, which is integrated with the clearinghouse. We have InTouch Billing, which is a billing service to help, reduce your billing costs and help you get paid more faster. So the objective is to have multiple trigger factors in your business as well, in your practice as well, so that you can serve the same patient in multiple ways, so that you can provide more value, so that you can provide more ongoing value, and you can maximize your engagement. So speaking of engagement, let's go from consideration now into the next stage, which is discovery. So, before we talk about discovery, I want you to get a sense of, the difference between consideration and discovery. So discovery essentially consists of the patient's experience, a sequence of events that take place when the patient is in your practice, when the patient is now officially a patient, and now the patient, is starting to make a new set of interpretations. They're no longer questioning the decision to work with you, but now They are essentially looking for validation of the decision they have already made to work with you. This is a very important consideration, because as private practice owners, we tend to think, okay, we have the patient, we're treating the patient, we're helping the patient get better. Awesome, we've done our job. It's not as simple as that. I wish it was. The patient has to be continuously reminded about the benefits of physical therapy. The patient is subconsciously seeking ongoing validation about their decision to work with you. A couple of mistakes, whether it's, a couple of bad treatment sessions, a couple of rescheduled appointments, maybe a bad experience they had, and the patient's gone. That's one of the reasons why not every single patient that you have completes the entire plan of care. You know how it is. Some patients just stop coming. So this is where the process of discovery, everything that happens when the patient's in your practice, I'm talking about engagement. Now, what do I mean by engagement and initial contact? Well, the experience that the patient has with the front desk, whether they were greeted, the copay, was it collected in a way that made them feel comfortable and valued and respected? What is the wait time that the patient had? What's the general experience that they had immediately prior to the visit? How do they feel when interacting with the clinicians and the staff members? What kind of discussions and interactions were they? Were they positive? Were they encouraging? Or were they, did the patient feel like he or she was just a number, that he or she was not being treated as a human being? You'll be surprised by how sensitive patients can be. They won't tell you what they're thinking, but they'll experience it subconsciously, and that'll actually destroy your conversions from discovery into transformation. And then all the transformations that do indeed happen, and I'm sure you have several transformations, they kind of happen out of sheer luck. My goal with you by the end of this training is to convert all patients, and I'm talking every single patient who's in the discovery stage with you, who's getting treatment with you, convert all patients into human billboards. Transform all patients' lives. Because you see, the extent to which you'll be successful is going to be directly proportional to the life-changing, the game-changing transformation you create with your patients. Not just patients who say, well, I came in for shoulder pain. By the time I left, my shoulder wasn't hurting so much. No, that's not transformation. I would call that, regular, care that's expected. We're talking about, going above and beyond. We're talking about the unexpected. We're talking about just exceeding normal parameters. And that's what you need to go from discovery to transformation. We're talking about a patient who says, I came in for shoulder pain. I could barely lift my arm. Now my shoulder feels so great. I can play tennis on the weekends. It's made me feel so much better about my life. It's made me lose weight, improve my energy levels, improve my relationship with my wife, allow me to interact better with my children, perform better at work. And it's also, because I've been able to be more physically active, not only have I lost weight, now I have lower back pain and I've got a promotion. You see where I'm going. Obviously, I kind of, I was trying to, make a point there, but you see where I'm going with this. The stage of discovery involves an outstanding experience where, the experience of the therapy or the treatment, which is typically the strongest part of the entire chain, because we're all outstanding clinicians, but the experience of the therapy or the treatment has to be so phenomenal that when you combine it with the immediate benefit or the improvement that the patient experiences, naturally as a course of treatment, you combine them, you basically have a patient who is now conditioned to give you referrals. So you see, that's the difference between discovery and transformation. Every patient that you're seeing now, every single patient, during every single visit, during every moment of that visit, even if they're lying down on a table, with their eyes closed or, lying face down for whatever reason, they are in a stage of discovery. Every single moment with the patient is an opportunity to facilitate discovery and move the patient from discovery towards transformation. So I hope that makes sense, because that's a very, very, very important part of the discovery process, the ability to transform the discovery process of the patient. Like I said, simple things to ask. Is the patient, greeted at your clinic? In fact, the patient's first visit, it should almost be considered a celebration. Does it help validate the patient's decision to show up? Think of your front desk as the barista at a coffee shop, welcoming customers to a unique and memorable experience. The front desk and the clinicians should go out of their way to create, like I mentioned before, personalized and unexpected experience that goes above and beyond. Now, here's an example. When a patient walks in, does the front desk say, "Hello, please be seated, and we'll let you know when the therapist is ready"? First of all, that's neither personalized nor unexpected. How about this, for example? "Hey, Joanna, it's so great to see you. How was parking? While you wait, can I get you a cup of coffee or a magazine?" "Coffee? Sure. How do you like it? Black?" Now, this greeting, on the other hand, is personalized and completely unexpected. You see, most patients expect to be seen at their scheduled time or even wait a few minutes. You want to make sure patients are not made to wait too long. And even if they are, do the staff members make eye contact with them? Do the patients assist them in every way they can? You see, staff members are always extremely busy helping other patients, taking phone calls, and managing the office, but it takes less than a minute to demonstrate to the patient that you care, because patients need continuous validation, like I had mentioned. Obviously, an important part of discovery is making sure that you have, interactions with patients where you demonstrate an acknowledgement of their condition, a reasonable effort, obviously, to treat them. You want to thank the patient for feedback, and you want to do everything you can to be able to take good care of the patient. Very a simple, but a very, very, very powerful point that speaks volumes about how you try and help the patient, how you try and interact with the patient, because you see the interaction with the clinician and the experience of therapy is at the core of the discovery process. We're talking about the entire chain of events, from the evaluation and the treatment, the home exercise program. When you combine that, like I said, with the immediate benefit that the patient gets, whether it's pain relief, increase in range of motion, the patient leaves feeling much better. This is the area, the discovery area is the area that clinicians focus on the most. It's the area in which clinicians receive most of their training, because it involves the delivery and the monitoring, the delivery of care and the monitoring of patients. Now, as a side note, let me mention that quick, compliant clinical documentation and streamlined billing, as you know, is important for clinical productivity. The ability to transmit the claim in the form of ICD codes, CPT codes, and modifiers to the billing software with one click is the foundation of streamlined billing processes. You want to do this, you can do this effortlessly with products like IntouchEMR.com and IntouchBillerPro.com. You can visit our websites to get a demo. But basically, when a claim is sent to the insurance company in a quick and efficient manner, the practice gets paid faster. Important differentiation. So I hope all of this makes sense. Again, to summarize the discovery process, you want engagement, which leads to initial contact. You want to target your marketing in such a way that there's a demographic and psychographic match between the type of patients you want to treat and the type of patients that you actually attract. Every experience that the patient has, from the front desk experience to the clinician's experience, demonstrates how you're different. As always, you've got to provide superior value. If you're providing cash paying services, you've got to demonstrate why, there's a pricing proposition, why if the patient spends $199 a month with you, they get more than $199 a month in terms of value. All your marketing during the discovery process should involve a sense of scarcity and urgency. All of your marketing should involve elements where you're telling the patient that there's a limited number of spots available. You're telling the patient that they have to take action by a certain date and time. Because you see, without scarcity and urgency, patients simply don't respond. And you can't blame them, because as human beings, there's a reason people line up for Black Friday sales, because, well, there's an element of, urgency to it, because it only happens on Black Friday. And there's an element of scarcity to it, because you expect, lots of other people to be standing in line for the sales as well. So there's a huge psychological component to discovery. And this is sales 101. But from the from within the context of a service-based profession like like private practice, scarcity and urgency are significantly underutilized concepts. Providing patients with immediate gratification so that they get that, whether they get a little, what I call prospect stimulator, whether it's a book, a CD, a DVD, some sort of an educational tool that makes them go, aha, I'm walking home with something. Giving patients immediate gratification, something they can, physically hold. These things can cost you anywhere from $1 to maybe $3 or $4, but the perceived value is so high, so significant that you're going to be shocked with how a $2 thing can actually result in referrals out of the blue. I mean, it's amazing how, little giveaways can significantly increase the perception of the practice in the minds of the patient. And finally, social proof. I mentioned this earlier. When you feature a patient in your newsletter and say, this is a patient of the month because he or she referred patients to us, you're conditioning other patients for referrals. You're setting the expectation. You're establishing the foundation that, listen, when you refer to us, we expect it, because a lot of other patients do the same thing. You're not setting the expectation. You're not setting the favor, if you will, of, hey, please refer patients to us. Please refer patients to us. On the contrary, you're implying, without explicitly stating, that, look, all these patients refer. You're kind of not cool if you don't refer. You see where I'm going with this? The conditioning of a patient to send referrals is going to be directly proportional to how much social proof you're able to establish, proving that you have referrals. Obviously, it's going to be a little difficult in the beginning because you may not have any referrals from patients, but you'll get there. You'll get one referral, then another and another, and all of a sudden you've got 3 patients who refer. So now when you tell patient number 4 that, look, there were 3 patients who referred before you, he now suddenly feels, okay, you know what, I'm not the only guy that's referring. And, well, come to think of it, why haven't I referred to them before? So the discovery phase now becomes a valuable sort of transition to what I call the transformation phase. So again, the discovery phase, which is the strongest part of the entire 3-stage patient life cycle, can be made significantly more powerful with a good degree of social proof, what I call referral conditioning. Now, let's discuss the transformation phase. Now, I've talked about the transformation phase as being the phase in which, there's a life-changing impact for the patient. And now, before I go into before I start talking about the life-changing impact, let me give you a quick high-level overview of what happens in the transformation phase. The transformation phase is a very crucial part because what it does is it's sort of setting the stage. Again, what it's doing is it's setting the stage for the patient to to come back to you and or to refer friends and family to you. So the way you get a life-changing impact for patients is simply, for starters, by following up with them. Because the moment the patient leaves your clinic until the next visit, or if the patient is discharged, they are now slowly starting to forget about you. So how do you move a patient from the discovery phase to the transformation phase? Communication. This is typically the weakest part of the 3-stage patient life cycle, and here are some ways to improve the conversion from discovery to transformation. Simple things. Again, these simple things go back to excuse me, the experience that the patient gets. Now, let's say the patient is tired, in pain, needs help. Someone in the office should actually offer to walk the patient to their car. Go the extra mile. In fact, and you might find this suggestion unusual, but it demonstrates, how and why transformations occur. Offer to have someone from your staff actually carry the patient's bags if the patient's carrying any bags. Anything else that they may have difficulty with, carry it over to the patient's car. Take this one step further. And by the way, I've done this myself. Ask the individual to give you their car keys. Get the patient's car keys, walk over to the patient's car, drive the patient's car over to the entrance, or over to the entrance. I'm literally talking about a valet service for the patients. Should the physical therapist or the clinician be the valet? Well, you know what? It depends. If you're a one-man show, why not? Because that's what you need to do initially. You need to do everything. But if you've got enough size, starting to do things like this makes your patient go, aha, gosh, these guys are amazing. I would have to be unfair to not refer to them. And you're doing it implicitly, not explicitly. You're kind of implying it without being over the top or without being obnoxious about it. Like I said about the valet service, try out that strategy with some of your senior patients, and you're going to be surprised with the immediate impact it has on your ability to transform patients. Another idea, every patient should get a phone call once a week after discharge for 6 to 8 weeks. Again, this is a very personalized and completely unexpected gesture. The kind of script you can use is, hey, Joanna, I'm just calling to check in to see how you're doing and to remind you to do your home exercise programs. You came to our clinic for low back pain, and I wanted to see if you were feeling better. If there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. By the way, we're never too busy for your referrals. Please call us at XYZ. And if there's anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to call. In fact, ask your friends and family to visit our website at www.mypractice.com. Another thing you can do is every patient should get a phone call once a month after discharge with a referral reminder script. The script goes like this. Hi, Joanna. Just calling to let you know that we depend on word of mouth referrals from valued patients like you. We do not spend money on advertising like other practices do. And the best way you can thank us is by referring a friend or a family member. We are never too busy for your referrals. So if you believe you know someone who might benefit from our services, please help us spread the word. You can also use this strategy by email, and you can use what I call a referral reminder script by email, and you can have what I call as a call to action where you give the patient instruction on what to do next. So here's how the script goes. Here's what you should do next. Simply respond to this email with the name and contact information of someone you know who might benefit from our services. We'll take care of the rest. We reach out to them and offer no obligations consultation to help them improve their health and wellness. It's a win-win situation since your friends and family will thank you for referring you to this valuable service. Another way you can encourage transformation is by using a twice-a-month newsletter that reaches patients by email and regular mail. Provide content that reinforces your authority as an expert. Tell patients a little bit about you and your staff and provide useful, practical information on an ongoing basis. By the way, you can do that with a tool like the therapy newsletter at therapynewsletter.com. You want to use other marketing and promotional interactions and special offers. Invite your patient to come back to your clinic with free trials of cash-paying services. Conduct regular patient appreciation days. Identify reasons to add value to patients. Draw them back to your clinic in the process. You can use appointment reminders by email, automated phone calls, and text messages. Help patients with any billing questions they may have. Send patients simple, concise statements to help them understand their financial obligations. So, again, transformation involves multi-mode follow-up, like I mentioned here. When you do all of this, you start to get testimonials organically, automatically. You start to attract influencers. You start to convert patients into human billboards. You create mass awareness for your practice. You'll even start to attract media, local journalists who say, whoa, there's something going on here. We need to explore what's going on here. Overall, the way you create transformation is by a sense of contribution to the patient's lives. You've got to make the patient feel better about themselves. All of us subconsciously, we seek attention, we seek validation, we seek recognition, we seek appreciation. And when you contribute to these feelings, by way of thanking the patient after each visit, by shaking the patient's hand, putting your hand on the patient's shoulder and saying, thank you so much for coming in. We hope you had a good session. We'll see you on Wednesday. When you do that, when you feature the patient in your newsletter, when you make the patient feel like they are a celebrity in your practice, and they already have a high perception of you to begin with. Why? Because you're somewhat of a celebrity based on the things you've done in the discovery phase. When you do all of that, gosh, you're creating a massive sense of contribution, and you're creating a connection to the patient that is going to help you, get more referrals from that patient. So all of these little things play a big role in your relationship with the patient. So I hope that makes sense. So the sense of contribution and connection goes a long way in building a relationship where you're able to guide the patient from the stage of consideration to discovery, eventually to transformation. So there you have it, the 3 stages: consideration, discovery, and transformation. The 3 stages that will go a long way in helping you establish the kind of relationship you have with your patients. So I hope that makes sense. I appreciate you attending this training. This actually concludes the training. If anyone has any questions, please type it into the chat box. If you're watching a video training of this webinar, again, if you're watching a video training of this webinar, then you can send us an email at you can send customer support an email, and we'll get your questions answered for you. So I hope this opened up a lot of ideas, a lot of avenues, a lot of suggestions, provided you with a lot of suggestions, and sort of made you think, made you go, aha. And I'm hoping that we provided you with at least one big idea. My suggestion to you would be that the implementation of one idea, one strategy, one technique is far more valuable than trying to do everything. Simply because if you try and do everything, you kind of do, you won't be able to do justice to all the strategies. You'll kind of do everything in a half-baked manner. What I suggest you do is try and do 1 or 2 things every week. And if you listen to the recording of this training, and you try and implement, I'm sure each time you listen to this recording, you'll get a couple of new aha moments. But each time you listen to the recording of this training, if you can implement 1 or 2 things that week and continue implementing and continue making 1 or 2 improvements to the consideration phase, 1 or 2 improvements to the discovery phase, and 1 or 2 improvements to the transformation phase each week, you will indeed see a multi-step evolution in the perception of your practice, in the relationship you have with your patients, in the satisfaction, the happiness you have with your patients, in the number of referrals you get, the fame you achieve, and overall the income you derive from your practice. Look, we got into private practice for a reason. We wanted to deliver outstanding care. We wanted to be our own boss. And if you want to be your own boss, you've got to drive patients from the stage of consideration into a stage of discovery, and finally, and a lot of us do a good job at this, but we again do it in a disjointed manner. But when you do it in a controlled, in a targeted manner with a very specific outcome, because you're starting with the end in mind, you're able to convert patients from discovery to transformation. You're able to help them evolve, mold them, condition them, guide them on the journey from discovery to transformation. Always start with the end in mind. Every single patient who you're interacting with right now is in discovery. You've got to put them into transformation. Every single person in your community who is not yet your patient, who will one day benefit from your services, or one day potentially benefit from your services, whether you like it or not, they're all in a stage of consideration. When they open up a magazine, when they go to the local supermarket, when they go to a store, a local store, when they go to a bookstore or any store in the neighborhood, are they learning about you? Are they seeing some sort of an advertisement or a joint endorsement of your business? Are they hearing about the benefits of what you have to offer from a plumber, from an electrician who goes into their house? All of these things influence consideration. So moving a patient from consideration, which can be done with joint marketing campaigns, joint endorsements with local businesses, into discovery, which can be dramatically improved by analyzing and improving your patients' interactions or your staff's interactions with your patients. You move the patient into discovery, and now when you move the patient into discovery, using all the different strategies I talked about, the use of email newsletters, the use of patient appreciation days, doing things that add significant value to the patient, including prospect stimulators. Once the patient is in a stage of transformation, you've created a human billboard. You've actually created an asset for your practice. again, you've created an asset for your practice that is going to substantially help you grow. That's going to help you transform the way you do business, the way you interact with patients, so that you can serve patients better and make more money in the process. I hope everyone has benefited from this training. I hope you had a good time with this training. I really appreciate you being here. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them on the chat window or via email. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here on this training. I really appreciate it. Thank you and have a good night. God bless. Bye.